It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode is brought to you by HP. Whenever you do your best thinking, the HP Spectre X360 is ready when inspiration strikes. With power save for battery life and focus mode to multitask, you can do your best thinking whenever and wherever it happens. The HP Spectre X360 2-in-1 convertible PC with Windows 10 saves battery life for whenever an idea hits you. HP Spectre X360, a more thoughtful laptop.
You're Locked On Raiders, your daily podcast on the Las Vegas Raiders.
Win.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Just win.
Your team
Just
every
win.
day.
Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won.
What's up, Raider Nation? Welcome into Friday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. This is for August 6th, 2021, but it's late night on August 5th. It's actually Thursday evening. I'm actually headed to the airport as soon as I wrap up this podcast and head out to the Hall of Fame, Canton, Ohio. Hopefully everything goes right with my flight, because you know how me and flights go. They just don't go very well. If you've been listening to this show for a long time, then you already know my history with flights. So hopefully I'm keeping my fingers crossed, my toes crossed, praying to Jesus that everything goes right with my flights, but very excited about the opportunity for the Hall of Fame being there this weekend. Canton, Ohio, Charles Woodson, Coach Tom Flores, the Violator, all going to be inducted, and it's going to be great times for Raider Nation. So I'm so excited and fired up to bring you the sights and sounds from Canton, Ohio. I'm also fired up about today's show. Coming up in segment number 3, your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Just got a couple that I'll be able to get to on today's show because I got a lot to get to in segment number 1 and segment number 2 as well. So I'll get a couple calls and a couple texts in coming up in segment number 3. Segment number 2, I was actually on the press box on ESPN Las Vegas with Ed Graney and Adam Candy on Thursday morning. It was a really fun show. It's always a fun show, but it was fun to be on that show. I hadn't been on ESPN Las Vegas in a while, so I had a really good conversation about the signing of Gerald McCoy, what I've seen at training camp, and just thoughts about the Raiders in general. So going to bring you that conversation in segment number 2. It's a little bit lengthier, about 15 minutes, but you'll hear that conversation in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, I'll give you the news and the notes of the day. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. And before I get started, I did want to give a special shout out here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. And the reason why is because this is a podcast about football. And yes, we have a lot of fun. And yes, we get to talk about the Raiders on the daily. But also, I like to look at this as a big family. Sometimes family fights. Sometimes family, laughs together. And sometimes we all grieve together. And so I want to shout out to my guy, man, Redbeard Raider. He's going through it. He actually sent me a text message, and I'm sure he won't mind me sharing this. But he hit me up and said, hey, last March, my brother passed away, and it really broke my family. Things haven't felt the same. He was 36 years old. And he actually asked me a question like, how did you cope with things with the loss of your son? And so I'm glad that I was able to be there and kind of help out Redbeard Raider. And I know that there's really no good answer to how you cope with things, but I mean, it is what you got to do, and you got to try to do your very best to deal with it. And so just wanted to shout out to Redbeard Raider and his family, and shout out to his brother, man, Raider Bubba, and just let it be known that obviously he's going to be missed by his family members. And shout out to Redbeard Raider, and let you know that all of Raider Nation's got your back, man. As I said, we're all one big happy family, and we're loving on you from a distance, and hope that you and your family, your mom and dad, are able to cope with this the best way you can. And it's not easy, but you just got to keep on trucking one day at a time. So shout out to my guy, Redbeard Raider. Now, let's go ahead and get into today's segment, just news and notes here in segment number 1. And the biggest news that came out on Thursday was free agent linebacker KJ Wright was visiting the Raiders. Now, Adam Schefter reported when he was on his way in, he said former Seahawks veteran linebacker KJ Wright is in Vegas to meet with the Raiders. It's a familiar scheme with former Seahawks defensive coordinator Gus Bradley now being the Raiders defensive coordinator. Well, it was a lot of speculation throughout the course of the day. Matter of fact, there was some reports that were out there saying KJ Wright signed with the Raiders. Well, he did not. Vinny Bonsignor, who does In the Huddle, following my show Unnecessary Roughness on Raider Nation Radio 920, put out there that KJ Wright was just a visit at the point. He left without a deal. Then Ian Rappaport for the NFL Network, he put out KJ Wright, one of the top free agents left, exited without signing. He has interest from a few teams and will remain in touch with Vegas. So it doesn't mean that he's not going to sign at some point. He just did not sign on Thursday. He'd be a huge upgrade at the linebacking position. I'd be excited about KJ Wright. He did some really good things for Seattle last year. And, it's funny. I was wondering, well, okay, what's the deal? Why is Seattle not re-signing him? And they haven't ruled it out completely, but they got some young guys there at the linebacker position. They got some guys that are cheaper than KJ Wright, and he is getting a little bit older, but man, he played really good ball for them in 2020. I actually had Curtis Crabtree on my show on Raider Nation Radio 920 on Thursday talking about it. He led off the show like at 2:10. He was on the show talking about KJ Wright, and he said, man, he had an outstanding season. And they might go and revisit it, but he deserves a little bit more money than they're willing to give him. And, they got some young dudes that they also want to try out at that position. So there's an opportunity for the Raiders to really cash in if they decide to ultimately sign KJ Wright, or he decides to sign with the Raiders. But he did not as of Thursday. But I'm glad to see, again, similar to Gerald McCoy, the Raiders are showing that they're not going to leave any stone unturned. They're going to try to put this puzzle together, put together the best 53-man roster that they can as they go into the 2021 season. And you'll hear the conversation that I had with the press box on ESPN Las Vegas in segment number 2. But that's what you want right now. I mentioned it on Thursday's show. That's what you want right now. You want these guys going at it, trying to find the best 53 men for the job for 2021. So I'm not mad at that at all. Also, some news that rolled out about the Raiders on Thursday. Running back Jalen Richard, he's going to be out for a couple weeks. This is according to Tashawn Reed from The Athletic. He put out the Raiders running back Jalen Richard has sustained a foot injury and will be out indefinitely. He missed the first few practices at training camp after being placed on the COVID-19 list and will now miss more time. Vegas has 5 other active running backs on the roster. Again, that's according to Tashawn Reed from The Athletic. And I heard Vinny Bonsignore in the Huddle, his show, he was talking about he doesn't think that Jalen Richard is going to miss, or not miss any time, but he's not going to miss a beat. Like, he's going to be on the roster, the active roster in 2021. And I'll tell you, I'm not questioning Vinny, but I'm not as confident as he is. With all those running backs that they have, with all those horses in the stable, and Jalen Richard being on the COVID list, and now he's missing time with a foot injury. He's not vaccinated. We know that. I just think that he's really going to be a long shot to make the team. He makes more money than the rest of these guys. I mean, I really don't see it. You got Josh Jacobs for sure. You got Kenyon Drake for sure. And you got some other guys. Of course, Alec Ingold, the fullback's going to make it, but they've got other guys in that locker room, in that running back room that can really go. I think Jalen Richard is going to have to really work his tail off to make sure he remains on the roster once he gets back from this foot injury. But he's really pushing it and really getting behind the 8 ball with this injury. So I don't root for anyone's injured. I don't root for anyone to get COVID. But Jalen Richard has had both now to start training camp. So we'll see what happens with him. But I'm not as confident as Vinny is that he's going to make the team. Also wanted to put out there a note from Mick Akers from the Las Vegas Review-Journal. He was talking about the value of the Raiders. Ever since they've moved to Las Vegas, the value of the team has continued to increase. And matter of fact, he put out over the past year, the value of the silver and black has increased by 10% to $3.415 billion with a B, according to Forbes. Apparently, their ranking now is at 16th among the 32 teams across the league. Even though they increased their value by $315 million in the past year, they actually fell in rankings. So they weren't 16th. They fell a couple spots. Now they're at 16, but they still are a team that's generating and creating a lot of money. Their value has increased by $2 billion with the B since the team has relocated to Las Vegas. Regardless about front office guys leaving, and there's a big story behind the front office guys leaving, Mark Bedane and all the other ones that have left. And I'm not going to sit here and speculate and throw out a whole lot of things that I've been hearing about it, but there's a story coming about why all these front office guys are leaving, and you'll hear it sooner rather than later. But please believe it's not what it kind of looks like on the outside. There's a lot on the inside that is going on. So I just wanted to pass along that value right there. The Raiders have increased by 10% to $3.415 billion as far as a franchise and their worth. And again, that's according to Forbes. Mick Akers from the Las Vegas Review-Journal put that out on Twitter on Thursday. And my final little note for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast has to do with Marshawn Lynch. That's right, beast mode. Former Raider Marshawn Lynch will make an appearance at the first Bud Light Beer Garden pregame experience located between the Luxor and Mandalay Bay for the Raiders' August 14th preseason game versus Seahawks. So that sounds like a pretty fun event, right? They're saying in anticipation of the first preseason game, fans will get a first look at the Beer Garden, the ultimate tailgating experience created by MGM Resorts. 130,000 square foot venue is complete with interactive football challenges. You could bet MGM sports betting suites, life-size Jenga and chess, live DJ entertainment, as well as pop-up stands from MGM resorts, restaurants, including Beer House, Diablo's Cantina, International Smoke, and Public House. So there you go. You want to talk about a fun time? I know Just Win Wendy had reached out to me on Raider Nation Radio 920 and had put out there on Twitter as well, wondering where people were going to kind of gather for the first preseason game and all that stuff in Las Vegas. Well, there it is right there. There's the event going down ahead of time for the preseason game against the Seahawks in Las Vegas. So check it out. Marshawn Lynch will be there as well. So that's all I got for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Coming up in segment number 2, the interview I did on Thursday morning with the press box on ESPN Las Vegas. That is Ed Graney and Adam Candy. You'll hear that conversation next. Before I get to that, though, I do want to tell you about Built Bar. And I've been telling you about Built Bar for quite a while. They got a lot of great flavors: coconut, cherry barcia, raspberry, mint brownie, double chocolate, salted caramel, strawberry, orange, cookies and cream, and German chocolate. Not to mention, they do have a brand new flavor. I tell you, they always have these flavors that, are limited time editions. Well, this is a brand new flavor that my tag team partner, Lee Sterling from ParamountSports.com, he actually told me about ahead of time, and he didn't tell me what flavor it was, but he said there was one coming out on Thursday when he went to visit the Built Bar plant in Utah. It was really cool. He said, Q, there's a brand new flavor out that's really good. Well, that flavor came out on Thursday. It was Rocky Road. So if you're a big Rocky Road ice cream fan, well, they got the Rocky Road Built Bar. You can check it out right now. He said it's really, really good. He had it right off of the conveyor belt. So he said it was outstanding. One of his favorite flavors ever. He got him a couple boxes already, and you can too. BuiltBar.com. Promo code LOCK15 will save you 15% off when you check out. LOCK15 is the promo code at BuiltBar.com. Segment number 2, it's on the way.
David Harrison here, the Locked On Washington Football Team podcast, celebrating with you a 21 grain salute to a less boring sandwich thanks to Dave's Killer Bread. I don't know about you guys, but when I eat pizza, I eat it for the toppings, not the crust. And when I eat a sandwich, it's for what's inside the bread, not for the bread. But when I throw a sandwich on 21 whole grains and seeds, thin sliced bread from Dave's Killer Bread, it is the epitome of addition by subtraction. That thin sliced bread lets me focus on what's inside the sandwich, but also adds to the sandwich with killer taste, killer texture, killer nutrition, a subtle sweetness, and a seed-coated crust. Dave's Killer Bread is America's #1 organic bread for a reason. It tastes so stinking good. Dave's Killer Bread is made with the highest quality organic and non-GMO ingredients and is power-packed with whole grains, fiber, and protein. Visit daveskillerbread.com to learn more and look for Dave's Killer Bread in the bread aisle of your local grocery store.
You're Locked On Raiders, your daily podcast on the Las Vegas Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Raider Nation, here we are, segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Going to jump quickly into my conversation I had on ESPN Las Vegas on Thursday. Thought it was a fun conversation. Talked about a lot of different subjects. Talked about Carl Nassib. Talked about Gerald McCoy. Talked about Derek Carr. Talked about a lot of the highlights and lowlights from training camp, and just got into a lot of good Raider talk. So here it is right now, my conversation from Thursday with the press box on ESPN Las Vegas.
A lot of Raider talk. Carr coming back. A lot of things to talk about yesterday. He knows what's going on. He's our new sports program director here at Las Vegas Sports Network at Lotus Broadcasting. You can also hear him 2 to 4 daily on Raider Nation Radio 920 AM and catch his podcast, Locked On Raiders. It's your boy Q. How are you, Q?
I'm doing really well, man. How you guys doing this morning? I'm excited to be on with you guys.
Yeah, we're doing well. What did you take? We asked previously on Derek Carr. He talked about Nassib yesterday. He was going to be asked as the leader of that team what he thought. What did you take from him? You knew he'd probably be the first player asked about Carl Nassib.
Yeah, I think he gave the answer that you kind of expected, and I know he's kind of alluded to it before where he's talking about, you don't have to agree with everyone's lifestyle. You don't have to agree with everything that someone says, but you could still be cool with them. You could still work with them and still have the same common goal, which is ultimately hoisting a Lombardi trophy. I mean, that's basically how Derek Carr summed it up. You heard that in the soundbite, and I mean, we all know where Derek Carr lies. We know his faith. We know, everything that about him off the field as far as, his personality. So I'm sure that it's not the absolute choice that Derek Carr would make, but I see where he's coming from. Like, hey, I don't care what this guy does in his free time outside of the locker room. His locker's right down from mine. But, we're going to get together, we're going to work, and we're going to, be the best players we could be with all the ultimate goals. So, I just think that it was the basically politically correct answer that Derek Carr gave.
It really does feel overall like this has been a non-issue, though, when it comes to the Raiders. I mean, Carl Nassib made his announcement, and that seemed to pretty well be the end of it beyond the support that he got that day. I mean, I think it speaks well to 2021 and where we are with acceptance of LGBT issues.
I agree 100%. Absolutely. And the thing about it, and Ed could tell you as he's out there at training camp as well, the guys are joking with him. They're out there teaching with him. I mean, anytime you see him running a rep and he's talking to the guys, there's no shade being thrown. I mean, it looks like just one of the fellas. It looks like training camp as usual is going on, and these guys are all trying to get 1% better each and every day, and including Carl Nassib. So that's the one takeaway. And I've paid attention to him, and not even in the reason to see what the reaction is. I've been paying attention to him because, well, he didn't play that well in 2020. And so I want to see if he's looking a little fresher, if he's looking a little quicker, if he's looking a little more dynamic. What kind of player can he be? And so in my mind, that's what I'm paying attention to. And I feel like, and like I said, Granny could correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like that's what everyone's doing, including his teammates, including the coaching staff.
I totally agree. I thought he made his announcement. They felt what they felt, and they've moved on. They want to win, and they want to get to the playoffs. And that's how they should be, by the way.
Yep.
They need to get to their point where they're back in the postseason, and this should not be an issue at all. I think he'll talk later in the week. He'll talk one time about it. We'll ask questions. That'll be it, as it should be. Stay with the position group up front. Gerald McCoy comes in. We talked about it earlier, Q. In our opinion, there's no downside to this. If we don't know if he's going to be like he was, a hard injury he had last year, but don't you have to take a look here? I mean, if the guy's 75% of what he's been, is probably an upgrade.
Yes, exactly. It's so funny. There was a lot of reaction to the signing yesterday, especially on Raider Nation Radio 920, where, well, how come they got rid of Mo Hurst? Well, what did you think you were getting in Solomon Thomas? And, there's the Raiders making another mistake. And I said, whoa, hold on. Pump the brakes. It's August 4th, and now it's August 5th. This is when you want them to try things out, right? You don't want them to be in week 4 of the season and say, hey, this isn't working. Let's go see what best free agent is out there available, because at that point, it's too late. This is when you put the pieces of the puzzle together. And I really broke it down. I thought it was a pretty good description, and maybe I'm just giving myself too much credit, but I looked at it as a puzzle. One of the big puzzles that you have in the box, and you look at the box and you see what the picture is supposed to be, and then you have about 90 or 95 pieces that you got to figure out how they all fit together to form that puzzle. That's what they're doing right now. So if Solomon Thomas isn't cutting it, fine. If Gerald McCoy, maybe he can come in and provide some competition, great. But it's better to find out now in August when the games don't matter and they haven't even hit the field for a preseason game yet than it would be week 5 when you're playing the Chicago Bears. You know what I mean? It's just that it's much better to do trial and error now than it would be in the regular season.
Q, we were speculating earlier about Gerald McCoy coming in and who ultimately the snaps come from. Is it Quentin Jefferson? Is it Jonathan Hankins? Is it Cleveland Ferrell in the end, depending on where they decide to line him up for the majority of his work? How do you think if Gerald McCoy is at all effective, it's going to affect the rotation for the Raiders?
I just think that it's going to be a healthy rotation. Something that we've heard Gus Bradley say many times is that they want to have lines. They want to have line 1. They want to have line 2. They want to have line 3 where they could just keep rotating guys in. So in the fourth quarter, when you're only up a couple points, 4 points, and you got to keep the Kansas City Chiefs out of the end zone, you can have a pass rush that's still fresh. You can have guys that are still healthy enough to get to the quarterback instead of allowing them to roam around and ultimately throw a touchdown pass to Travis Kelce to win the game. I mean, you want to have guys that can get there. And so I just think that he's part of the rotation, and if it takes a few snaps away from Jefferson or Klee, like you mentioned, then so be it. I look at McCoy, knowing that he's older and has been in the league for a while. I look at him as a guy who's going to help out. He may be able to provide, 3 or 4 sacks in the season if he's healthy, and apparently, according to all reports from yesterday, he looked great. He took his rehab very serious, but as Granny mentioned, that was a serious injury, a quad injury. That's big time. So, it's one of those situations where he's got to he's got to get in there and show that he's worth the spot. But if he is, it's just another part of the rotation, and they got to find the best guys to be part of that rotation, whether it's Solomon Thomas, Cleve Ferrell, Quentin Jefferson, whoever it is. They've got to find those pieces, and they've got to get a guy in the middle, that defensive tackle position, that can provide something. Jonathan Hankins, could provide something so a Patrick Mahomes can't just step up into the pocket anytime he wants to.
Q, you're on your way to Canton to attend and cover the Hall of Fame ceremonies. Tom Flores and Charles Woodson goes in. Give us your opinions on both. I think both are obviously deserved candidates. I would have put Flores in a lot sooner.
Yep.
But he's in, and that's really all that matters, and he's there to celebrate it, along with Charles Woodson. We've both been on Zooms and interviews with them, so break each down in terms of their candidacy and why it's important they're in.
I'm excited for both guys. Charles Woodson was a no-brainer, and it's crazy because when you talk about both of those guys, and I always lead off with Charles Woodson was a no-brainer, first ballot Hall of Famer, it almost feels like he doesn't get as much attention as he should because it did take so long for Coach Flores to get in. And from everything I've been talking to with different Hall of Fame voters like a Shereen Williams or a John McClain, they keep saying that what was really holding him back was his Seattle days, even though that really wasn't his fault. It was a terrible ran organization, from the front office down. It just wasn't ran right, and it was always held against them. And so glad to see that has been lifted and that Coach Flores is going to get that opportunity because he was able to do so many things. I mean, we look at, the world today and we talk about, a Latino coach. We talk about a quarterback. We talk about a guy who, really worked his way from the ground up to where he was and to be able to lead the Raiders to a Super Bowl. I mean, it's so exciting to know that this dude that really put in so much work with the organization throughout the course of his life, is getting that opportunity to smell the roses before it's too late, before a snake situation happens or a Cliff Branch situation happens, which he's not even in the Hall of Fame, and he should be, and hopefully at some point he will be. But you want these guys to understand what it means to be a Hall of Famer before their family has to do it for them. And so I'm so glad that Coach Flores is getting that opportunity. He's going to be well celebrated this weekend. I can't wait to actually be on the grounds there in Canton, Ohio, and just to be able to soak all that in. And then, as mentioned, man, Charles Woodson, drafted by the Raiders, went off to Green Bay, and I know a lot of Raider fans don't like to hear this, but he grew up, man. He matured. He really became a leader. He became that dude when he was in Green Bay, returned to the silver and black, and was the guy that they needed at the time. They needed such a leader because they were desperate for a guy that had some know-how, had some want to and could lead the young dudes in the right direction. I know they didn't win a ton of games when he returned the second time, but he gave them hope. He gave them, a little bit of energy, and he gave Raider Nation some fire and something to be excited about. And I'll never forget the 2 interceptions he had off of Peyton Manning at the Oakland Coliseum. That was the one guy he had never intercepted that he said he wanted to intercept, and that they're joined at the hips going all the way back to college. And for him to get Peyton Manning twice in the same game right around his birthday, that was his birthday gift to himself. I thought that was awesome. That's one of those memories of Seawood that I'll never forget, and just so happy that both of them get to go in and rightfully deserved to get that bust in Canton, Ohio that you can never take away.
Q, what are you most excited about, just personally, about going to the Hall of Fame and being a part of the whole experience, even beyond the Raiders?
Well, it's so unbelievable. I've been there once before when LaDainian Tomlinson and Jerry Jones were inducted. Kurt Warner was part of that. I mean, it's just, you don't realize how much greatness you're around until you're around it. You just really don't. All the players that have played football, all the guys that have gotten paid to play football, and then just to know that you're in that small fraternity hanging around with all these great athletes that were always at the top of their game that have gold jackets. It's unbelievable. And the one thing I'll say that I hate from a media standpoint is we're so busy running around all weekend long and just trying to, get audio here and try to get sound bites here that we don't really get to walk through the hall and just soak it in. But man, I always encourage fans, if you have one trip that you can make it to the Pro Football Hall of Fame and just soak it all in. Take your time with the hall. We go through it and fly through it. But man, it's just the hall of greatness. You think about, it doesn't matter if it's a Raider, it doesn't matter if it's a 49er, a Cowboy. Steelers, whatever. I mean, there's just so many great players enshrined, and there's stories behind each and every one of them. I'll tell you right now, I'm a sucker for the speeches. There's always a speech or two that all of a sudden my eyes get a little watery, and I look over at the wife, and I'm like, no, it's my allergies. I'm having a bad allergic reaction right now. And she's like, no, you're definitely crying. So, it's emotional, man. These guys who we always kind of look up to and say, man, I really respect the way that this dude plays the game. They kind of humble themselves and tell their backstory and where they came from and shout out their family. And it becomes an emotional event, man. So the Hall of Fame is where it's at. So I'm so excited. Can't wait to land in Canton and get this weekend started.
Yeah, and beyond Flores and Woodson, I know you'll really enjoy their speech. So I'm actually looking forward to Manning. Manning in his post-career, as we all know, whether it's SNL, whether it's, the commercials, he just brought such a different mode that maybe if you hadn't kept up with him or known more about him, you would have been shocked maybe in his post-career. Now you see him and how, self-effacing he can be and how humorous he can be. Beyond the two Raiders, I would think you also want to hear him because I think he'll bring some things in that speech that will be pretty funny. And here's the thing about him. One of the greatest ever. He has no problem making fun of himself. The other day, he says, well, it took 7 hours to do my bust because of my forehead, and they had to use a lot of clay. And I love how he's come off in his post-career because I don't know if a lot of people knew that about him when they just watched him play football all those years.
Right, exactly. You start to see the human side, the personality in Peyton Manning. There's a reason why many networks were trying to fight to get him on their broadcast just because he brings that, and he does. I mean, he can make fun of himself, and we're in the business where we talk every day, and we like to, really think that we exactly know what we're talking about all the time and that we're at the top of our game. But sometimes it's okay to laugh at yourself and kind of, not take yourself so seriously. And that's what you can respect when it comes to Peyton Manning. As talented as he was, as great of a quarterback as he was, to be able to just humble himself, make fun of himself, laugh at himself. He's done the Saturday Night Live stuff. I mean, that's all great. He's going to be on the Monday Night Football, the dual broadcast that they're going to have this year. That should be interesting. I'll pay attention to that a little bit. I just think that he's a fun dude, and it's nice to see guys be able to have fun post playing, and that kind of keeps them away from saying, well, I think I might have a year left or 2 years left. It kind of gives them something else to do and where they don't need the rush of playing the game. And so I like what Peyton Manning brings to the table. And I'll say this, the only downfall for this weekend is that all the speeches are going to be limited to 6 minutes because there's so many. They're inducting 2 classes, including the Centennial class, that if they didn't limit them to 6 minutes and ultimately the cutoff time is 8 minutes, they'll start giving you the swan song music at 8. So basically you're out of there. That's the only downfall, but they have to because there's just so many guys going to be giving so many speeches.
Well, I know it'll be a terrific time for you. Travel safe. He's our new program director here at Lotus Broadcasting, also 2 to 4 on Raider Nation Radio, 920 AM, host of Locked On Raiders podcast. Follow him on Twitter at YourBoyQ254. Travel safe, Q. We'll see you when you get back.
So there it is right there. Ever since I've been in Las Vegas and working in the building with ESPN Las Vegas and Raider Nation Radio 920 and Fox Sports Las Vegas and AM 1230 The Game, haven't had those interviews as of late. Haven't been on with Cofield and Company, so I miss those times. So hopefully you enjoyed that conversation. It was great to be on with the morning show, and like I said, it's fun to be able to jump on with another radio station and talk some shop, and I thought it was a good conversation. So hopefully you enjoyed that. I know I did for sure. Coming up in segment number 3, your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. This is the Locked On Raiders podcast.
I'm Kevin Ostreicher, host of the Locked On Ravens podcast, and attention shoppers, we now have taste in the bread aisle, Dave's Killer Bread. That's right, an organic bread that doesn't need 3 spoonfuls of sriracha jam to delight your taste buds. Dave's Killer Bread is a 21-grain salute to the end of boring bread. A brand on a mission to make the most of every loaf, to rid the world of GMOs and artificial ingredients, and plant the seeds of good in all that they bake. But Dave's Killer Bread has done more than raise the bar on bread. In fact, Dave's Killer Bread was built on the belief that second chances can change lives when its founder Dave, the guy with a guitar you see on every loaf, returned to the family bakery after 15 years in prison. Dave took that chance and ended up creating what would become the country's #1 organic bread while never forgetting his not-so-easy path. That's why at Dave's Killer Bread, they proudly practice second chance employment, hiring the best person for the job, regardless of criminal background. And by the taste of it, things have worked out rather well. Dave's Killer Bread. Bread amplified.
You're Locked On Raiders, your daily podcast on the Las Vegas Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, Your team every day.
Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with Rahul in Seattle. He's calling to talk about a few subjects, including the red zone offense and 3rd and long, and how critical those two fields will be in the success of the team in 2021. Here he is, Rahul in Seattle.
Hey, Q, it's Rahul from Seattle. Today's the beginning of padded practices, so obviously we're taking the next step to beginning this season and hopefully making it a good one. I wanted to get your opinion on a couple of things that I'm interested in for this team. First of all, on offense, and I think this goes to the heart of our problems as a team, is the red zone offense and getting touchdowns instead of field goals and having to do that over the course of an entire season. Last year we were 54% in the red zone in terms of scoring touchdowns. That put us at around 24th in the league. And for the sake of reference, the Packers were number 1 at 80%. So that big difference in scoring touchdowns naturally translates to a ton of points over the course of the season and can be the difference in wins and losses. So I'm hoping that I see a lot of work on the red zone for this offense, and finding ways to get in there. As far as the defense is concerned, I'm mostly interested in what we're doing on 3rd and long. I think that down has been just our albatross. We seem to look great on 1st down, 2nd down. We seem to be able to stop the run when we know it's coming. We seem to be able to get penetration and stop guys in the backfield on the early downs and put teams really in precarious situations on 3rd down. And yet, on 3rd and 12, 3rd and 15, 3rd and 16, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 10, all those downs, we seem to give up big plays and we seem to give up conversions. And so I don't know what we need to do to look like we know what we're doing on 3rd and long, but this defense certainly needs to do something. And I'm hoping that in the padded practices, they make that a point of emphasis, how to stop 3rd and long for this defense. Because, that's just been the kick in the pants for our team, getting teams in situations that they should be able to get out of and then letting them get out of it anyway. And that's why, both the offense and the defense need to really improve. Getting all the way into the red zone and not scoring is letting the other team off the hook, and giving up a 3rd down conversion on 3rd and long is letting the other team off the hook. And that's what we keep doing. And we can't keep allowing these teams to survive when we put them in situations that they shouldn't be able to get out of. So I'm hoping we see a lot of emphasis on the red zone offense and the 3rd and long defense. But padded practices start today. So, season is coming, and we have to face it. Let's do it. Go Raiders. One love.
There he goes, Rahul in Seattle. Thank you so much for the call. Yeah, red zone offense, that's going to be major. You got to get 6 and not 3. Remember, we had that theme before in 2020. We had a whole show based on 6, not 3. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, they definitely got to do that. I think that Kenyon Drake, Foster Moreau, Brian Edwards, I think all 3 of those guys will really help with that red zone offense. As far as 3rd and long, I think Gus Bradley, Ron Milas, and Richard Smith, they'll make sure the team does not allow that to happen again, because that became a major issue. I don't know what was more annoying, getting 3 points instead of 6 points, or giving up 3rd and long consistently, playing the sticks and still not being able to wrap up. That's the biggest thing, man. They're going to have them playing the sticks, but they're going to also have them come up and wrap up. That's why a guy like KJ Wright, if they eventually do add him to the roster, he's the guy that can kind of set the tone on the field as well and get these guys lined up and let them know that, hey, don't go too deep because you want to make sure you're able to come up and make the play. He's one of those field generals. So I'm very excited about the potential of KJ Wright, and I think if they do add him, they'll really be able to thrive on 3rd and long and really get off the field. Now, I think they'll be able to get off the field without him on 3rd and long, but they'll be a lot better if they do have KJ Wright. Thank you so much for that call, man. I appreciate you. Next up, got a pretty lengthy text from Reggie Reg out of Pomona. It said, "What's up, Q? It's Reggie Reg from Pomona again. You've made this offseason go by kind of fast, blessing us with your content and giving us diehards information that we had never known, like Cliff Branch and Marcus Allen being cousins, getting stories from guys like Van McElroy being drafted into the Soul Patrol, and how all of them were Pro Bowlers. And just hearing different viewpoints from our Raider family, it's been real good. Now, The pads just came on. I pray for our guys' health out there. I want to see Corey Littleton with that physical mindset because early on, Coach Bradley said he wanted to see that physicality out of him. Henry Ruggs with added 13 pounds, want to see him in and out of his cuts. Is he running violent routes like Carr's been saying? Best practice player he's ever played with? So I want to see it because all I'm hearing is Zay Jones this and that. And from Waller and Renfro, first name out their mouth is Brian Edwards. So I need to see Ruggs. Last kid I want to see is Andre James. We think we know what he brings, but honestly, we're trusting Tom Cable on a handful of snaps and having him having familiarity. So I just need to see him prove everyone right. So Littleton, Ruggs, Andre James. My bad about the long text, but this time we see what it's really going to look like because you play the game with pads. You feel me? And physicality is a major part of the game. So congrats once again, brother. Hopefully run into you at the Raiders versus Donkeys game in Colorado, October 17th. I'll be there repping hard. Raiders. That's from Reggie Reg from Pomona. Thank you for the text, my man. I appreciate you. And yeah, the offseason was fun, man. It went by really quickly. One of the quickest off seasons I remember. So maybe I'm just getting older. I don't know. But that was a lot of fun. So I definitely appreciate that. I'll say from a guy who's out there at practice, Henry Ruggs looks all the part. He does. Brian Edwards is the guy that's getting all the hype right now. But Henry Ruggs has looked the part as well. He really has. He's made a couple really good plays. You can see the added weight. You can see that it's all muscle. And he looks good out there. He's going up there getting those 50-50 balls. And it's funny. I mean, I put out a couple tweets, put out a couple videos of Henry Ruggs doing his thing. And, you know, people are like, well, that's not what I want to see. I want to see this, that, and the other. You really can't win. I'll say Henry Ruggs looks really good. Brian Edwards looks really good. The offensive line looks really good. Again, this is early, though. They've only had literally 7 days of camp, even though they've had like 8 or 9 days, but they've had a couple days off. But really, 7 practices is all they've had. So I don't want to get too far ahead of myself and say, oh, my gosh, this team is, you know, they've turned the corner and this is who they're going to be. We don't know that yet. You know, obviously, there's a reason why they're still bringing in guys. They're bringing in, veterans, and they just signed Gerald McCoy. They just brought in KJ Wright. They didn't sign him, but they brought him in. So obviously, there's still some areas of this team they need to improve, and they're not really liking what they're seeing just yet, and they're kicking over every stone and checking what's underneath it to see if they can help improve this team. But for the most part, they're playing some really good ball right now. Andre James looks the part. And like I said, Edwards and Ruggs and who else did you mention? Littleton. Littleton, it's hard to really tell what he's doing right now as far as, you know, if he's playing a lot better because the linebackers aren't really going 100%. I think he's fine. I think Nick Kwiatkowski, if anybody, is the guy that may be, you know, kind of not on the outside looking in, but he may be a guy who loses his starting role. He could easily slide back to a complimentary role, but who knows if that's what they want. So Corey Littleton, I think he'll be just fine. Everything's simplified. He'll be able to go out there and just really, really dominate and not have to think, just go out there and play. And my final call for the show today comes from Chris out the 209, repping that Stockton, California. I know he spent time in Oklahoma. Not sure if he's still there, but originally from the 209, like I said, Stockton, California. He's calling in to ask how it is covering my favorite team and how difficult it is to cover them straight up, or do I feel the pressure to lean towards the home team a little bit? Here he is, Chris, repping the 209.
Yo, what up, Q? Sorry, it's a little windy. I'm out here working. Super quick question for you, man. I just had one before the season got started, and there was more to talk about than you knew what to do with. I figured while it was so slow, I wanted to ask you, how has it been being a Raider fan and getting to cover the team firsthand? Now, I know that you've only been there a couple weeks in Las Vegas, but you see a lot of guys that end up getting assigned to teams that didn't grow up fans of the team. And I'm like really interested to hear your perspective. You are a genuine Raider fan, grew up a Raider fan, always been a Raider fan, and you're now covering your favorite team. Do you feel a little bit of that home team bias? Do you feel the pressure to, now that you're having to give the news to a network, kind of give it a certain way? Well, what's your thought? How has this transition been, man? Let me just say this last thing and I'll hang up. It really is a super huge benefit to have somebody on the grounds that we know is a true Raider fan. I don't know about all these other guys that are a part of the Raiders network or a part of different broadcasting groups. I don't know their history with the team. Maybe they grew up, you know, a 49er fan. And I don't want to hear the opinion of a 49er fan. Hear the opinion of Raider fans. Even though we can have fan goggles sometimes, I genuinely want to hear it. So that's my question for you. I've been thinking about that the last couple of weeks. Haven't been able to listen every single day, but I wanted to just throw it out there, man. Big congratulations to you. God bless you, man. What a great achievement in your life to be able to do that. I mean, really, great job. But yeah, that's my question for you. God bless you, sir. Hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day, Raider Nation. Preseason's around the corner. Looking forward to it. You guys have a blessed one. Be safe.
Chris, thank you so much for the call. I really do appreciate it. And, it's funny, man. That's a good question. I really do think it's a good question. And, I've said it many times that I learned a lot of things when I was in Central Texas about covering sports. And, of course, that's where I got my first opportunity to be on the radio doing sports was at ESPN Central Texas. And what I learned from that, and I think that it was a benefit that I started there with a team that was not my favorite team in the Dallas Cowboys. And, of course, Dallas is a very popular team in Texas. Of course, they're Texas's team. I mean, Houston's there. The Texans are there. But it's all about the Cowboys. So I think me getting that opportunity to cover the Cowboys and knowing that it wasn't my team, I could just cover it and just say, hey, man, we get to call it how it is. And there was fans that would call the radio station and get mad. Oh, Q's not giving us enough love. No, I'm just calling it how it is. But I was able to learn that that's what you do. If you want to be professional, that's what you got to do. You've got to be able to call it how you see it, not how you necessarily want it to be. And if you notice across the landscape of sports, most of the beat writers that cover certain teams, they are not fans of that team. Like Vinny Bonsignor, he's not a Raider fan. I can tell you that. He's really good at what he does, but he's not a Raider fan. Vic Tafur, he's not a Raider fan. Tashawn Reed, he's not a Raider fan. I mean, and all these guys are great. They're really good at their job, but they didn't grow up Raider fans. So I think I was benefited by learning in Central Texas, learning how to cover the Cowboys, learning how to cover Baylor. I'm not a Baylor guy. I don't walk around wearing green and gold like a lot of people do in Central Texas because it's all about Baylor. But being able to be objective and still be respected, and even by, the organizations like, hey, this guy, he's not a fan of ours, but at the same time, he's not just going to go out there and bash us unless, we deserve it. I think that helped. And I think that helps me be able to talk about the Raiders because if it's not good, I'll say it's not good. And that's just how it is. And I think that they respect that because they know at least I'm telling the truth. I'm not going to slander them. I'm not going to just go ahead and try to get headlines and just, go for the jugular unless they deserve it. And even then, I'll still do it respectfully. And I'm not going to also look through silver and black glasses and think that, okay, they're going to go 17-0. Derek Carr is going to be the number one quarterback in the league. And, this, that, and the other. It's all about rainbows and puppy dogs. I'm not going to do that either because that's not fair to you. And that takes away from my credibility. So, that's how it's been great. By the way, it's been a lot of fun. I'm blessed just to be able to do this on the daily. I'm so excited about the opportunity. But I think with the training that I've received, it's helped put me in the position that I'm in and has made it a lot easier to be objective instead of over-the-top super fan or a negative Nelly. You know what I mean? So that's just kind of where I'm coming from. But great question, man. I definitely appreciate you asking that. And that's all I got for today's show. I'm out of here. I'm about to take off from the house, head to the airport, which luckily, unlike when I was in Central Texas, was about an hour and a half away from my house. It's about 15 minutes away from my house. So I'm about to head to the airport, and hopefully my flight does not get delayed. It does not get canceled. Something does not go wrong because, again, I always have in the back of my mind my luck at the airport. But hopefully next time I talk to you, it'll be live from Canton, Ohio. I'll be back in Las Vegas on Sunday evening, so I'll miss practice on Friday and Saturday and Sunday. As a matter of fact, they're having practice at Allegiant Stadium on Sunday. I wish I could be there, but I won't because I won't get back in town till Sunday evening. But we'll be back here on the Locked On Raiders podcast on Monday. I'll be doing my shows from Raider Nation Radio 920 from Canton, Ohio on Friday and an extra special one on Saturday. So check that out if you get the opportunity. Saturday will be 12 to 2 and Friday 2 to 4 p.m. both West Coast times. So until then, Raider Nation, have a great weekend. Enjoy the Hall of Fame. Check me out on Twitter. I'll be giving you as many sights and sounds as possible at your boy Q254. And take care of your family over the weekend. And most importantly, as always, just win, baby.
This episode is brought to you by Spotify Green Room. Have you ever listened to a podcast like this one and you wanted to bring up your own point or just chat with other people that are listening at the same time? Well, let me tell you about Spotify Green Room. This is the first social audio platform made just for sports fans. The app is free to download, and once you're in, you can talk with us, other fans, athletes, insiders in real time about your favorite sport or team. Download the app, currently available on iOS devices. Create a profile, link your Twitter, join one of the groups for the latest league updates, and then you'll see us there. Spotify Green Room, changing the way we talk sports.